I walked into the dugout between innings and I sat down next to the head coach. And he looks at me and says, "What are you doing here?" I says, "Oh, you really can call balls and strikes in here.
Yeah.
This is great."
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Punch Drunk Podcast. I'm Paul Brooks, joined always by our co-host, Joey.
How's it going?
I will announce that Michael and Mike Lane are both on assignment, and this show is being sponsored by DMD Wood Designs. Please contact them for some of the finest custom woodwork in the area. You got to check their products out. Fantastic. But we're going to talk in this episode, we're going to talk a little baseball. We're going to talk a lot of baseball. Because not just from a player's perspective or a manager or any of that, we're going to talk from the umpire's perspective. Joining us on the couch in studio is the president and vice president of the Massachusetts Baseball Umpires Association and my good friends, President Dominic DiMare and Vice President Mark Rulli. Welcome, guys.
Well, thank you for having us. This is an honor sitting on this couch with the likes of Paul Stewart and Logan Mankins.
Yeah, I'd like to think it is an absolute honor. Yes.
You should have had them at least sign the couch.
Yeah, well,
You know, that's what you should do.
we'll sign the wall or something. Maybe you can sign the couch.
I'll sign the couch. I don't know. It's not worth anything. I'll sign
I think I'm just excited about a spinning chair.
Yeah, it's great.
Little
Great
things
as
in
well.
life at 46.
So let's talk a little baseball. Dom, you first of all, I'm not going to let this show go any further until I congratulate you again one more time, this time in the form of the podcast. But Dominic, what people don't realize is you were just inducted into the Yawkey Baseball League Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Well-deserved.
Almost a week ago. So I'm a week removed from that honor. But
Yeah.
it was a surprise, to say the least.
Yeah.
I figured I had to have pissed off more people. And come to find out there was one person on the committee that wanted me in, so I was in.
No, that's good. Congratulations. We were both at that dinner, and it was well-deserved after all these years.
Yeah. It was, when I think back to our relationship, it was quite a long time. I started umpiring in 1994. I don't know how many years. I'm not good at math. So, but a lot has come from that, and a lot of relationships have been forged, and it's kind of an amazing ride.
Yeah.
So.
And what else are you doing? You're at the college level too. You're
I train college umpires. Along in the spring with the college assigner Nick Zabelli of the CBUAO, and I train Little League umpires along with Mark. Mark and I are all about training. Most of our business is the Boston Umpires Assigning Group.
Yep.
And we try to do that from the Little League level all the way to the college level.
So fair to say that you've done everything and seen everything from the little leaguers, the youth level, to Babe Ruth level,
Yep.
to Cal Ripken, Lou Gehrig, to high school, freshman, JV, varsity, to Legion, to college. That's quite a gamut. That's
Oh my God! I didn't.
Every
know
level.
When you say it, when you say it that way, I look at it. Wow, that's a lot, right?
it's a lot of baseball and a lot of different levels.
Yeah, there is. And you know what? What's common with it all is we all need umpires.
Yeah.
And that's the common theme. That's why we're here today. Honestly, Paul, I can't speak more passionately about the fact that we are at a critical stage right now. A critical stage to where if it doesn't get any better, we're going to have youth leagues without umpires.
And we started seeing a lot of that now because you start seeing where they're rescheduling games just to try to also get officials at these games.
They're going one step further than that. They're going with games uncovered. Games aren't being played because there's no umpires.
Now, at normal levels, even, most of the time it's a two-man system, but oftentimes
Not anymore.
you may find one guy doing a game.
At the sub-varsity level in high school, that's the norm as opposed to the exception. It's the norm now.
Wow. What do you think the percentage is that you're down with numbers and then some reasons why? I know I have my opinion on why.
Yeah.
And it's all this bullshit from lack of accountability from leagues. allowing parents to think they have their God-given right to yell.
You know what? I'm going to tell you something, Paul. And I was thinking about this a lot in the last couple of days since when you invited me on. It's not only your parents. Some of it has to be borne by the umpire too.
Yeah.
Umpires have gotten literally entitled to the point where, and I won't say all, and I'm coming from the assigner's point of it now, but they know that we need them more than they need us in terms of the assigning process, because there's so many guys out there that are doing this that they're just drawing from the same pool of umpires and they're spreading the pool out.
Sure.
So it becomes even more of a problem with that, along with pay, fees, parents, coaches, players. It goes on and on and on. I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons why. And part of it is like our retention problem is that people that we try to bring in and train don't want to be yelled at anymore.
Yeah,
Mark brings up a great point. Go
I
ahead.
think it's a different look too. When you look at like a little league program when we were kids in the 10-year-old baseball, you didn't have two patched umpires on the field. That just wasn't the norm. You had like a father maybe calling balls, strikes from behind the mound, something like that. But now you have your majors baseball for 10 to 12, then the 10 to 8-year-olds. You have an adult umpire on that field now, where in the past that was never an adult. That was a kid that was a high school senior that decided I was going to make a couple extra bucks. That's how I started. I was a high school kid, wanted to make a couple extra bucks, did a little league game.
Just think about how we started, Paul. When we started,
Yeah.
when we did it, we did it because it seemed fun at the time. You know what I mean? And it was a great form of extra income. God, I put my kids through college with baseball and umpiring money. I'm not literally through college, but I paid for their books and a lot of the
Sure, some of the small
Yeah.
pieces of it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, I mean, it's a great, I tell kids all the time, and I talk to a lot of kids that are starting out. I say, what I open with is, tell me a job that you could work in the summertime, that you basically could sleep until 10 o'clock in the morning and make conservatively $1,000 a week. Do you think your parents are going to give you a hard time? No, they're not. And that's what I'm talking about. If you're a hustler right now and a kid, I would say a kid 17, 18 years old would be more accountable. But that alone, if he works every day, he can make $150 a day times 5, and you don't even have to work weekends.
Yeah.
Especially for kids who played the game.
Right.
I got into it because I stopped playing. You get to that certain age where you're like, I'm done playing. But you want to be involved in the game that you had so much passion about, just from a different angle.
Yeah.
Still involved in the games.
Hey, I always say to people, the reason I got into umpiring is because I couldn't hit a curveball with an ironing board.
Yeah.
So that's I said I loved the game. I wanted to stay involved.
But you
in the
could
game.
see it, right? You could see
I could see it at that
that's
time.
half of it.
Yeah, sort of it. Yeah, but I wanted to stay in the game, and I did every avenue of our craft in order to stay in the game. And that's kind of why I'm still here. I don't really actively umpire, except when I have to, and for the most part, I have to. It's not because I want to. Games will go uncovered if I don't jump in and Mark doesn't jump in and do a few assignments here and there. So it's tough.
I remember going to the classes when I first, back in 1988 is when I went through to get the patch, stopped playing baseball, started going through the classes, and I realized, holy shit, I didn't know that was a rule, or I didn't know that rule either.
Oh, that's
and I had been playing the whole time. And so you think you know the rules until you actually go to the class and you go, damn, I didn't know that was a rule.
No, it's amazing.
So it gives that proper training, and then you realize, okay, the rule book is so thick. The test is is pretty intense, and you got to go through 10 weeks of the course of training.
What, Paul, and
About 8 weeks,
we're coming up with alternatives now to. That's a problem because a lot of the kids today, they want things like now.
Yeah.
They don't want to go 10 weeks, or they don't want to commit for 10 weeks. So we've started, or we're going to start online training to where a kid can just grab an app, go through the training protocols or the training profiles or whatever they're called, and then we can monitor their progression, and they get a certification. Once they get a certification, then we do what we have to do to add on to that
And do a lot of on-field training as
Yeah.
well. That's
We get to the
big.
point now, if we have like 2 or 3 people come up and say, hey, I'm interested in umpiring. In the past, you'd say, our class is starting in December. But now, you get 2 to 3 people. You're like, listen, Saturday morning, what are you doing? Let's go meet at, we were in Hyde
Yeah, we
Park.
don't have the
yesterday.
luxury to wait anymore.
Yeah, no more
We can't
waiting.
do that.
Well,
Yeah.
so they're going to get trained online, but then you're going to bring them together for on-field training.
Yes.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I think that it's important to get the basic rule sets out of the way, and you can do that on an online platform. And then going forward, we do the things, because obviously, Paul, when you and I started, it was basically pass the rules test and then throw you on the field,
Yeah.
right into the frying pan. We don't, and we don't want that to happen because we can't afford not to retain these people.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we try to make it as easy and as accommodable as we can with some physical interaction in terms of training in the field.
So, the one thing that none of us have mentioned, which I have always felt was very important to be an official, it doesn't matter the sport. Baseball, we're talking about now, and that's all about game management. You can know the rules inside and out, and you can be the very best at enforcing those rules. You can look good, you can dress the part. But if you don't have good game management skills, then we got problems.
It's like organizing it.
I mean, don't think you're just going to be the dominator out there. Don't insert yourself into the game. You don't need to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Just call the game.
You got to remember too that we just came out as a society. We just came out of COVID, where
Yeah.
we were isolated. We were away from people, and you're talking about a sport that has everything to do with people interaction. So now you're training new people that for the last 2 years have been hiding in their houses.
in the
Right.
basement.
How much fun
Right.
is that? Like all of a sudden you got 2 people.
It's a Class
yelling
A
at you.
studio.
It is a Class A student.
Yeah.
I
You
love
got,
it.
you got 2 different points of view, and now you got an umpire trying to figure out who to listen to and how to engage both of them. And those
Yeah.
have been taken away. Look at the NCAAs now. When we have a conversation with coaches, we actually meet at the 15-foot line. No more coming out in the field and talking. We go down to him, he comes to us, we talk, and then we separate. And that's just where we're heading now. That people's skills, that's really important still, but now they're trying to find ways to stay away from people.
You find the parents are getting out of hand now, or has it gotten worse?
Parents feel that they're part of the game, which is different than I don't go there to cheer for little Jimmy now. I go there to cheer against a team, which is different. Like if my son hit a base hit, that's great. And then my son got thrown out at second. Well, how did he get thrown out? Wasn't his fault. He obviously was in there.
Yeah.
That umpire made the wrong call. And that's the difference in cheering on the fact that the kid just made a really great play. We don't have that anymore. Like when the opposing shortstop makes a stab into something into the outfield, it's no, oh my God, what a great play that was. It's, oh, he didn't hit it hard enough. It's just, it's not looked upon the same.
A lot of what I've seen too is it's changed over the years, Paul. As I say, I'll mention it again. It was not like that when we umpired, but I feel like some of the parents now, they think because that umpire is getting paid a fee, that gives them the right to voice their opinions negatively, never positively,
Yeah.
but always negatively. And that's a shame. And that's a shame because these people, for the most part, are the same volunteers as the parents that are doing the field work at the beginning of the game. Those are all volunteer guys. Yeah, the umpire is getting a fee, but the umpire has to travel 30 or 40 miles in his car in order to get to that game. And it's a sad state of affairs today, and it's gotten worse.
And like I said, this umpire. It's not his full-time job.
No.
He's already gone through his workday, but he's been trained and understands the rules
Yeah,
way more than any parent
that's
who
right.
just feels as though they have the right to just start yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
They need to understand better about this. Joey, when you played, wasn't a lot of arguments. You basically played as a quiet player.
Mm-hmm.
Your brother, on the other hand, was a little bit, but he also showed a lot of respect towards it. Maybe it's because I was an umpire. I don't know.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with it. If you come from a
Times
family-
have changed.
Yeah, they have. They definitely have. They have. It's almost to the point now where it's more normal to go to a baseball game at some point during the game and get yelled at by somebody. What we don't train with is how to handle that situation. And, to Mark's point.
Like, Don, let me cut you off a
Yeah.
second, only because I always think about this moment where if you're a youth umpire at a field and you
Yeah.
throw out a coach, you decide that he's crossed the line and now I send him home. Well, now he goes home, right? And there's someone waiting for him at home. How'd your game go today, honey? Well, it didn't go so well. I got sent home. Well, now the next morning that person goes to yoga class, and now we're having a conversation with her best friends about the father. And there's more to it.
Right.
So umpires have to have a certain bit of control, knowing that if I do this action, it's really going to impact this guy's life. And he's not thinking about that. He's got the blinders on, and all he's focused on is just, I just want to yell because I'm mad about that call. But umpires have to have the control to say, look, I got to walk this
We
guy
don't
down.
have the yellow card in baseball.
Yeah, we're doing
see, I
what
look
we
at
can to keep you here.
I look at that and I go, okay, what are you teaching your players at the youth level? They see everything you're doing as a coach.
You know what, though? I got to stop you there because I don't think it's coming necessarily from the coach. I think it's coming from like those ejection videos on YouTube.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
ESPN.
That the kids are watching and
Yeah.
they go, "Wow, this is okay to do." You know what I mean?
But does the coach allow that?
Well, yeah, that's where the parent part of it comes in.
And that's a little bit of
He
an
thinks
issue.
it's part of the game, and it is part of the game at the major league level, not at youth baseball.
Not a youth baseball. Not even all the way up to high school. It's not.
It's not.
No, and then it gives the kids an excuse as to it wasn't the fact that they may have had 5 errors during the game. It just gives them a way to broom it off to the umpire as him being the problem. When
No.
Well, how many times you umpired? How many times did the coach come out and say, "You cost me that game"? And you look at him and say, "No, the left fielder dropping the ball with the bases loaded with 2 outs, that kind of screwed you tonight, coach."
Yeah, I never was that specific. I just said if you rehash this entire
Right.
7 or 9 inning game, you probably realize I did not cost you this game.
I mean,
You got plenty of E's. You got plenty of E's in the book right now, Coach.
And you know what? And when it's all said and done, Paul, when you go home, and I did it as I was a coach at one point, and that's the worst thing that can happen. Having an umpire as a coach, because that's like a doctor lawyer type of thing.
Yeah.
You can't be both. You have to be either a coach or
Right.
an umpire. But some coaches decide that they want to go to class and learn the rules so they can be that lawyer that knows that one rule that can trip up somebody or an umpire, maybe a not as informed umpire, which there are many. You know what I mean? So I don't even know where I was going with that.
But even in game management, when you're talking in game, and I would suggest, because I've had this happen, I was an umpire for years down in the Cape Cod Baseball League, and we had those arguments down there. And there were times when you realize maybe I did blow that call.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to admit to it. You just say, Coach, I can't change the call, but I owe it to you to bear down, and I will be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times coaches go, well, shit, I expected a little bit more fight back, but you know what? Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
Because as an umpire, if you screw up a call or make a wrong call, nobody the 3,000 people that may be there or may not be there don't
Yeah.
have to tell you that. You already know.
Yeah.
We really care about what we do. We don't want to consciously make a bad call or a wrong call. It just happens out of the heat of the moment.
We had it a couple weeks ago. I was down at a university down in Rhode Island. I came up and I banged a kid on the pitch. That's probably a little bit in. And the kid looks at me. That was in. I go, "You got to walk away," because he knew. He walks away, and the coach goes, "Mark, did you miss that?" And I'm like, "I missed that, coach." And he goes, "I got you."
Yeah.
And that was okay. And we moved on because it was part of the game. It's
Or
something that
I'll say
happened.
Part
something
of the
like
management of that.
throw it there again. That's what I used to say.
Yeah.
Was that?
Now, can you imagine if you said, no, that was there. That was there. I got that.
No,
You
throw
know,
it there
no.
again. I won't miss it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Listen, at the end of the day, I'm not getting paid like a major league umpire.
Right.
And I'm human. I'm going to make a miss. I missed that pitch, coach. Okay, don't do it again. I won't.
And that's part of the reason that we took the attitude that we need to train the umpires prior to them getting on the field, as opposed to just throwing them on the field
Right.
into the
Right.
frying pan, so to speak.
Yeah, what was we were talking about how coaches will always start arguments, or players even. What was probably the most hostile argument you had with a player, coach?
Well,
Wait a minute. No, let Mark go first on this because I know what you're going to come up with. But
I'll take one out of Florida, and I tell the story when I'm teaching the classes. We were doing the game up at Pensacola, and I had a play at the plate, and it caught it out safe. I don't even remember. And I remember the old guy coming out and going, what'd you have there? And I said, I had this. The ball came in, tag happened. I caught it this way. And the guy looks at me and goes, "Oh, you got a northern accent." I go, "Yeah, I do. I'm from Boston area." He goes, "Ah." He goes, "So first time down here?" I go, "No." Like we're totally not talking about the play. And he goes, "Sometimes down here you got to ask for help." And I go, "Well, I'm not going for help. I was 5 feet from the car. I saw this." And he goes, "No, ask for help." I said, "I'm not going for help, coach." I go, "Don't ask me to go for help again. I'm going to run you." He goes, "Okay." He goes, just sometimes the water down here and the sun comes down and it hits, sprays off the water and gets right in your eye. So maybe you should go for help on that call. And I said, oh, come on. And I ran him. And the guy, this little old man, flips his hat backwards. And I think I blushed for maybe a week after some of the things that he called me. I was 23 years old. And I was like, oh my God, what just happened? And I'll never forget that one. That was a good one.
There's many. Many over the span of the years, but the one I distinctly remember was like a playoff game in the YBL, and it was an intense, very
the Yawkey Baseball League.
Yeah. It was honestly, and it was a very intense playoff game, which most were back then.
Yep.
And the game was over. There was a lot of close calls, and we were getting dressed. And back then, you get dressed by your car, discreetly, and you tried not to, make notice of yourself. But this player came over to my car and started to berate me on my car. And I looked up at him. I go, aren't you so-and-so's kid? And he goes, yeah. He goes, how do you know that? I go, well, I worked for the police department back when I was there, and I actually knew a lot of the cops. This was the son of a cop. And he goes, you're in my locker room. I just appreciate you just leaving. And he wouldn't. And I stood up and I said, if you don't leave, things are going to happen that you're not gonna like, and I'm sure your father's not going to like. And he goes, what's that? I go, well, number one, you're going to get arrested. And number two, you're going to have to explain to your father, who I know very well, how you ended up getting arrested. And when he finds out that you were berating an umpire, he probably won't be too happy. So we got him to go away and all of that. And that was good. So, and there's been ejections. Sometimes we get out of control. Players get out of control, and you have to somehow get the situation into control. So a lot of people have to sometimes go away, and and they knew that I had no tolerance. I had no patience either. So
you were a member of the infamous Stormtroopers.
Oh yes,
and. So just a little bit of lead in on this. For those who are watching who may not be from Massachusetts, in the Northeast baseball, some of the best, longest amateur baseball leagues have been around. Cape Cod Baseball League is the number one in the country. Then internally in the city, you've got the Boston Park League and the Yawkey Baseball League.
Don't forget the Intercity League.
And the Intercity League. That's what I'm saying. It's just another league.
Yeah.
But these are all competitive leagues.
Very competitive.
Extremely competitive. And these leagues have brought also fame to a lot of guys who have made it.
Yes.
Richie Hill was one.
Richie Hill in high school had no idea where the ball was going. I umpired Richie Hill when he was at Milton. So,
these leagues are extremely competitive.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it does take a combination of players, managers, and game officials to make that league what it is.
That's right.
And for years, it had been known as a tough league, and then the competition level had to elevate everything. From the managers, they had to get better, and from the umpires, they had to get better. So credit the leagues on that.
Yeah. That's why I say a lot of it doesn't necessarily lie with the players and coaches.
Right.
We have accountability as umpires as well.
Absolutely, because you also start weeding out the guys. And let's face it, we know there's guys who you're just not ready for this.
No.
You're just not ready for this, and you need a little bit more development. So you know what? Going back to your earlier comment about kids want it instantly, they're not going to get certain leagues. They've got to work their way up to it.
I can remember when I first started giving Peter Williams, who was the assigner back then, a call begging him, please, just give me one chance. And to his credit, he put me in one game, and I thank God I never looked back. I was good enough. I played organized baseball for a while, but like I said, I loved the game, so I wasn't really that good. And I said, how can I stay in this game and do what so I said, somebody suggested to me, a friend of mine suggested that, why don't you try umpiring? And he was a Park League Hall of Famer and an umpire years back.
Yeah.
And he started me on this journey. And I actually did, just a short story, sent him a picture of my Hall of Fame plaque, and I put it in an envelope. I said, thank you. That if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have gotten this. And that's kind of like the relationships that go back a long way, and you remember, you never forget them.
Certainly also helps when you work with guys who have also made it.
Yes.
I'm thinking the Joe Driscolls, the Shorty Longs, guys who made it.
Curly Clemens.
Curly Clemens. Those guys have made it.
Yeah.
And when you work with them and you get little bits and pieces, it's okay for umpires to be evaluated and critiqued a little bit even after a game. I loved sitting around post game,
The best.
couple of beers and just talk and say,
The best.
and listening to those guys. Shorty and I worked, Bobby Long, well known, and he knows almost everybody in the major leagues. And he worked in the major leagues. Danny Merzel now is currently in the major leagues.
Yep.
Those guys, when you start talking, you go, you know what? Your angle could have gotten better. You could have done this. Listen to it. It's okay. It's going to make you better.
Danny Merzel was the biggest pain in the ass in the park.
Yeah.
He was a catcher, and he had every angle figured out already. And I said, "Look, why don't you just catch and let me do my job?" And now he's in the major leagues. Right?
We had a guy last year. I was doing a game. I think it was a Cranberry League game, and I got a.
There's another league I failed to mention, Cranberry League.
I got a call to go do a game, fall league up in Harvard, and I'm like, yeah, all right, I'll come up and see some
You can
pitches.
tell he's not from Harvard.
And he goes, can I come with you? I'm like, sure, but be aware that it's fast baseball. I go, I'll be fine. So we get out there, and I'm calling the dish, and 3 innings comes in, he comes down and says hi, and I'm like, hey, how's it going out there? He goes, I'll just be honest with you, I haven't seen the ball leave the pitcher's hand, but I hear it hit the glove. I'm not ready for this. And I said, that's fine.
Yes. That's you remember that. You remember when you hit your first mid-90 fastball, and I was down. I can just remember when Richie Hill was pitching from Milton High School. All you heard was,
Yeah.
You're like, all right,
where's the ball?
All right, looks good.
I had no idea where the ball was. It's in the catcher's glove.
It brings me when I was one of my second games down the Cape League. I tell my boys this. I had Daniel Bard when he was down there, and so I talked to the kid. Now, for those who don't know the Cape Cod Baseball League, I'm telling you guys something you already know, but they're not all on the same team. They went to different colleges. So I had a catcher who was from Georgia, and then Daniel Bard from North Carolina. And when he comes in the game, I didn't know. And the catcher goes, Blue, he's got faster and faster. I go, great. He goes, I just don't know where it's going. I go, holy shit, just catch it, please.
I can relate to that.
So I went down. That first pitch came in. It was poof. And I'm like, wow.
Yep.
I didn't see the catcher move his glove. Strike.
It sounded like a strike.
That was, I turned around and saw all the guys with the radar guns. They're like, oh my God.
Yeah. No,
So-
I know.
Yeah, it's fun.
It is good. Now, we've got to a point where so many discussions on this, and we're going to get a lot of comments, and I think people, again, this is baseball from the umpire's perspective. I still don't understand what people think gives them the right to shit all over the umpires and make their comments. Imagine, I've told a lot of people this, you imagine if an umpire was able to go to a third base coach. That was the shittiest move, waving that guy in. Are you kidding me? How stupid can you be?
Can I tell you what I did?
Stuff like that. Ridiculous.
I actually, between innings one time, I think it was when I first started and I didn't know any better. I was at Quincy, and I walked into the dugout between innings, and I sat down next to the head coach. And he looks at me and says, what are you doing here? I says, oh, you really can call balls and strikes from here.
Yeah.
This is great.
Exactly. You got the right view.
I said, you got the right view.
I mean, when you start looking at you going to a player, you should have been in front of that ball. You made an error.
Yeah.
That's a terrible error. Now you just extended the game. That's on you. Imagine if you started doing
You
that.
don't want to do that.
That'd be fantastic.
No, but see, the thing is you imagine from a player, manager, how many things you probably on average will face in a 9-inning game about 420 to 440 baseballs, right? Pitching.
Yeah.
Out of that, how many are you really going to screw up?
I would say 5.
How many will a player boot it, make an error,
Yeah.
bad pitch, missed the zone, held it upstairs? He had a sinking curveball that hung high and the kid roped it.
It's amazing that the way you put that. and it's true.
Yeah.
It's so true. There are guys that have probably missed more than 5 during the course of the game, but
Think about the playing, like you go from a college game in the morning, you do something, and then you go to a little league field,
Right.
and now you call an obstruction on a kid, and the coach wants to come out and argue with you, and you're like, you're going to argue with me about obstruction. Little do you know, I taught 120 umpires this past weekend about this call, but go ahead, tell me what your opinions of the obstruction call was, because you know better.
Story with you when I played Little League, and one, I don't want to expose the name, but one dad, you were like a coach at the time for me, like just helping out and stuff. And one coach was arguing with the umpire on a call. I forget what it was, but then you had to step in and be like, "You don't know what you're talking about." And and then he was arguing with you about how you knew the game. He's like, "You don't know the game." And you're like, "I don't know the game."
I
taught the game.
And I told him and I told the umpire, I said, the worst thing about this umpire having to listen to you is that you don't know the rule.
right.
And you're arguing like you do know the rule. Right. And the umpire looked at me and goes, he is right because he is an umpire and he does know the rules.
Exactly.
But I despise when people just argue for the sake of arguing to make themselves look good.
We had that in Little League. The Little League World Series had that when the kid made the play at second base, the umpire does. The MLB umpire goes to do the Little League game, right? They put him at second base, he bangs the kid out, and the coach comes out, and the first thing out of his mouth was, I didn't even see the play, but I just wanted to argue with the MLB umpire. Why? What are you doing?
Like that's
Like that's like a bad.
Yeah, like what are you doing?
Yeah, whatever.
So let's talk a little bit about accountability because something's got to get done. Something serious has to get done to get the young umpires back in and get them to develop.
Yes.
There's a lot of guys who have left. I left for multiple reasons. One, my knee. Secondly, I wear glasses, and it's a little tough to start working.
You had a family, right? Kids can somehow put that into perspective.
So it's kind of the point where are leagues held accountable? How often are leagues held accountable for their managers or parents?
Well, I will say this. Most of the leagues that I represent that are my clients, for the most part, they do realize that there is a problem, and they have made their coaches and parents accountable. But it doesn't go far enough.
So for other programs throughout the country who are watching this, and I want you to get a little bit closer, I want to make sure everybody hears this, is how do you do that? So there's a lot of states that have run through. We're going to get into the bill shortly. But without going to any state legislative branch to enforce a law, how have things been done to curb this nonsense with parents and or coaches? Now, I give a little bit of leniency, not a lot, but I could take it a little bit more from a coach and a manager than I could from a parent.
Yeah.
So
it's part of the game.
It's a little bit part of the game. It is.
A part of the game is it's okay, and I tell coaches this. We talk to coaches all the time. A part of the game is having the coaches be trained in how to argue.
Right.
Believe it or not.
Yeah.
Some of that is not being trained. So I talk to coaches all the time at youth leagues on the respectful way to argue with an umpire if you don't think a call is right. It's not to berate him. It's not to tell him how much he sucked. It's basically just to say, this is what I saw from where I was standing. Did you have something different? And let the umpire or any sport official just explain what they saw. And if they do it in a respectful manner, most times it'll solve itself. Not the parent from 180 feet away yelling at me that Johnny was safe at second base when I'm 10 feet from the play and saw the tag on the back, and they didn't see the tag. You know how it goes. You steal a second, the guy gets tagged. All they're looking at is the guy going into second base. They're not watching the entire play by the glove tagging him on the back before he gets to the base. All they see is the guy standing or holding second base. You know what I mean? So,
how much training do you do with the umpires about that? About how to argue?
With the umpires?
Yeah.
It's constant. We're constantly telling them to engage. If a coach comes to you respectfully and engages you in a respectful manner, then give them
show them the respect.
Yeah, I think it is too. Like nowadays, when we do the umpire classes, when the first thing we would talk about calling balls and strikes, that's not the first thing anymore. The first question I get every year: how do I handle the fan that yells at me? It's the first question. It's no longer about, was that obstruction or interference? Is that this or that? No. It's what do I do when the fans start yelling at me? And that's a sad state for me. I look at that and I'm like, that's not okay.
That's not what it's
wrong.
about.
Right.
That's not what it's about.
And because you as an umpire, there's a lot of conversations that happen on the field that they're not privy to. Like when they go out for a pitching change and the coach is standing on the mound.
Yeah.
He's not out there asking him what he had for breakfast. He's waiting for you to come out to ask about that pitch that you're calling at the knee. Is that as low as you're going to go today? He wants that conversation to happen. And the fans don't know that happened.
And
he
those
addressed
questions
it.
can be answered as long as it's brought to forth in a respectful manner.
Yeah.
I don't tell umpires not to explain calls. I tell them all the time. If they come at you, listen to them. And most times, what you have to do is you have to be a listener and not a talker.
Yep.
So listen to what their bitch is, and then go on and give them an explanation. After that, we can't prolong that discussion anymore. Then he has to decide whether or not he wants to stay in the contest anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And disagreements now where you can have that coach come out and have that conversation and you can say, all right, coach, head back to your dugout. I'm going to meet with my partner. We're going to give you the best thing we saw in that. And from there, we're moving on.
Yeah.
And okay.
We're not coming back out again.
We're not talking anymore after this.
So we talked before we went on the air, and we talked about there are some officials, again, going back to the pro level, people watch this, and people will comment that they only know the bad umpires. And I would challenge anybody, if I said to you, who is the worst Major League Baseball umpire right now, they're going to all come in, Angel Hernandez. They'll all come in. And so what? But then I say, okay, give me 3 of them. And they may name 3. But give me the 3 best umpires, and they're going to struggle. Because they're always going to look for the bad side of officiating.
Yep.
They never say, and even this is true with announcers too. Like I can't tell you when a ball is just on the line, and some of the worst things that ever happen is that box that they always show.
Yeah, we're basing it off that.
Oh my God, that was low. That was low.
And left
From the
field that's
camera,
watching down the middle.
and it's really not from dead center.
No, it is
You
not.
know, it's more at an angle.
If it was dead center, you'd see the back of the pitcher's head the whole.
And if they ever did call the exact zone, the batters would be completely
They
up
think
in
they had a
arms.
problem with time restraints. Now, when they want to speed the game up, can you imagine if you wanted to call the strike zone after the zone?
Yeah.
You'd be there for 3 or 4
And those
hours.
are professional umpires. Remember, we're talking about a kid that's doing a 10U game today. He might miss a pitch.
There's not times that I don't stand there myself and say, Jesus, where the hell was that? You know what I mean? But then I move on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You move on.
Yeah, I move on.
It's a long game.
It is. It's just like people don't want to move on.
I find it absolutely disgraceful. I umpired for 30 years, 31 years maybe. But I find it disgraceful that people will argue and then even the next inning, still arguing, still chirping from the stands. And then I only had one in 30 years of umpiring where I ever was engaged in a conversation with a fan. I always try to say, I'm not listening to you. You people are here for nothing.
I tell my son all the time. My son is at the NCAA level, Division III, and he's at a regional this weekend. But I tell him all the time, you can ruin a career by engaging with a fan.
Yeah.
A career can be gone as quick as you made it. And
Not to mention that everybody nowadays has their cell phone,
there you go.
video recording. They're doing everything.
Yeah.
And that's different because we didn't have that back when we started.
And you know me, Paul. I had a very hard time not engaging.
You would have been one of the ones video recorded.
Oh yeah, there's no question.
We crack jokes all the time. I tell the new guys, don't end up on a YouTube video.
Yeah.
That's your goal when you're on the field. Don't end up on a YouTube video.
So let's talk about this. It just happened, last week now, the introduction of the bill?
Last
Tuesday.
And I want to thank Rob Consalvo. I believe he was the underwriter of this.
Yes,
Yes.
he was. Yeah.
Rob Consalvo out of the 14th District, Suffolk County. This is fantastic. This is House Bill number 1427. It's an act relative to the assault and aggravated harassment of sports officials. It is about time.
Some people think that it's going too far, though. Can you imagine that?
That is true.
Well, you know what? Those people, I would challenge, have they been an umpire? Have they been on the field?
They're our brothers. Some of our brothers think it's gone too far.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to mention any names
wanna
because
bring them
it's not. It would just cause a whole thing. But
And I don't think it's the official. I think it's the administrators that have the officials that they are signing. Those
Yeah.
are the guys that are worried about putting somebody in jail or whatever. That official who has an experience where he's threatened and he feels like, I don't know, I'm getting off this field or this rink today. I think that official wants protection. But I think the guy that assigns him wants to cover his back pocket and make sure he's still getting his signing fees.
You know, as president of the Mass Baseball Umpires Association, I don't want to see any parent or any coach or any player thrown in jail. But I believe that this bill only serves as a deterrent for that kind of behavior, and know that it's up to a judge to decide what the penalty is.
Yeah, we should talk about what the bill actually was.
Well, yeah, because I'm reading through it right now. But here's the thing. There has already been people who have served prison time for a physical assault on officials.
So here's the difference.
Here's the strange thing about it, and I'll let Mark go on, but police have no arrestable powers if an official is assaulted. In this state right now, as the law is written, if you assault an official and it's not witnessed by a local law enforcement officer, he can't be charged, he can't be arrested, which is unbelievable. And this goes beyond just sports officials and umpires. When we were at the hearing at the State House, there were T workers, EMTs, nurses, all basically with the same issue, being attacked, being spit on, some cases nurses stabbed. This is not just a problem, and they have the same problem as we do in terms of retention. They can't get people to sign on as nurses or T drivers or T bus riders. It's got to stop. It's got to stop somewhere. And that's why I'm so passionate about this right now, because honestly, it's just got to stop.
What this bill helps too is if I went to Dunkin' Donuts this morning and I got out of my car and walked across the parking lot and started throttling some guy, just stop beating at him. It's an assault charge. If I'm stuck somewhere as an official inside of a gated area where I cannot leave by my own choice and a fan comes on and hits me, it's still simple assault. And there has to be a differential in the two. That person, that sports official who is actually stuck there, he can't leave. He can't decide in the fifth, you know what, I've had enough of this, I'm going home, right? He has to stay there to finish his game, and he feels that upon him that it's his job to finish that game. Well, it's not okay for him to sit there and you to berate him for 3 innings, because that's what you have the ability to do.
Some will claim First Amendment rights in terms of freedom of speech. These are all private events.
Correct.
A baseball game is a private event. You were invited to this. You didn't come on your own volition. So to have an umpire or any kind of sports official, no matter what sport, to take that kind of abuse is not okay.
Even if you weren't invited, you voluntarily yourself attended the event.
Do you remember the back of the ticket of a Bruins game? You said if you got hit by a puck, it's on you, basically. Yeah.
But here's the thing. This bill in Section B that I'm reading, that there's 2 words that are very key in this: willfully and maliciously.
Yeah.
Those are 2 key words in this bill.
There's actually more key words. I think the biggest thing that bill does, 1427, it goes after the verbal aspect. So before we even get to the point of a physical effect, if I stand up and I go, man, this umpire, he sucks. The guy next to him goes, yeah, you know what? You're right. You do suck. And now the guy next to him does it.
You're enabling
an
avalanche after that.
If you're able to say, as a reasonable person doing a job, that I feel like I'm being threatened, and we've all had moments as officials where we finished games, got to our car, drove down the street to change. This is stopping that. If you stop the verbal aspect before it gets to the point where it's going to become a physical alteration, I think that's a win. I think if you can put up a sign on the backstop that says, listen, the guy working this is covered under H1427, which means that if you do something to him and put him into a position where he feels threatened, you're at risk of being arrested for harassment of a sports official.
The fact that this bill is starting to gain some recognition right now, Mark, is this because leagues have not held fans accountable?
The MIAA states at high school games that you're supposed to have an administrator
at the game. Yeah.
If you go to a game up at, I'm just going to name a school off the top of my head, like a Hingham, where it has 5 fields, how can one administrator be at 5 fields at the same time? So if
that administrator or athletic director assigns 5 people, that must be at each of those games.
No.
Why aren't they doing that?
Because schools don't have the budget money to go pay for an officer to be at those things. And I understand that. If you go to a basketball game, that's an easier step. I have one official that can watch a basketball court. But when it comes spring activities where you have off-site activities, like a hockey game, how many high schools have a hockey rink in their backyard? Not many. So that's an off-site facility, right? So now the off-site facility is going to pay for an officer to watch the crowd. They're not going to pay that money. But something has to be done where I am accountable for the actions of the fans now. So now if I do get in trouble, it's on me.
He's thinking about that.
He's thinking.
No,
about
I don't think, I tend to take the other route and say, I don't care if that school doesn't have a budget resource or doesn't have enough. If you are the high school going to assign 5 games at 5 different fields, you must. Otherwise, don't assign 5 games at one time.
You see, that's not going to happen because people pay their taxes, and they know that
And
if I have
user
to pay
fees.
for the sports, if I have to pay for that police officer's overtime, that's going to cost money, and that's going to be taken away from the program. Whether it be maybe you dump your freshman program now because you can't put an official there. Now, is it fair to the freshman player who's not good enough to play JV, but now he can't have his game because there's no one to pay for the cop? It just keeps rolling down that road.
No, we are constantly thinking out of the box, Paul, to figure out that happy sweet spot or medium to where we can retain officials without putting an extra stress burden on them. You know what I mean? Because there's a certain amount. I mean, we have young kids that are starting out that are literally hyperventilating, like I used to during a championship game, just to do their first game because they're afraid of what they're gonna encounter during that contest or whatever the case may be. So
I think one of the other things too, like you were saying, if you look at like one of the smaller towns and you're already charging the family $200 for their son to play Little League baseball, so now you're going to have to say, well, we need to pay for a cop to be here. Who's going to pay for that? Well, it's going to get more into the addition of now it's not $200 for your son to play. Now it's $300.
But do they have police? They don't have police presence at youth games. They're just at high school.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
But should they? Like, I guess that's the next step. If
Well,
we
my
can't
my
police
take,
it-
Mark, on that is if you feel as though they should need a police, then first start with why aren't they putting a school administrator at those games?
Yeah.
It'd be a little bit less than a cop. So, have your teachers go or
You do
or
have
somebody.
unions though. Like as somebody that works as an educator in the 5th grade, we deal with like if I'm here for more than this amount of time, I have to get paid double time. And like schools don't have the budget for that.
What about the police?
That's
Same
even
deal.
better.
They get paid overtime too, right?
Yeah, but who's gonna?
at a higher rate.
But again, so if you're paying money here, you got to take it from here, which means that maybe we don't have enough helmets now for kids.
But you also said that the police they don't have arrestable offenses here
Well, no, if they
Unless there's-
unless
They're just
they
a
witness
deterrent.
unless they witness it.
They are a deterrent. They're just standing there. I'm a deterrent.
No more than the school administrator would be.
well, less
No
because
more than
they-
school
the-
administrator.
The administrator doesn't have police powers.
It's kind of like that guy at the parking gates that's telling you can't park there. And you park there, what's he going to do?
Well, I think something has to get done. I mean, this, first of all, the bill is going to codify protections for sports officials against physical assault. How many officials have been physically assaulted? Let's say in the last 5 years. Do you know of officials that have been
don't know.
physically?
I don't know the statistics on that. I just don't. But I can tell you that just being an assigner and you get maybe a call a week
Yeah.
on something that's happened.
Feel as though they've been threatened.
Well, let's look at that issue that just happened down in Florida where the gentleman walked onto the field and punched the umpire. The
Yep.
72-year-old veteran umpire, by the way. That was his 3rd time doing an action against an official. 3rd offense. So 1 and 2 were, don't worry about it. Now the 3rd time he does it, maybe something happens. Who knows? This bill is trying to get away from the first one.
And just so you know, Paul, it's just based on that's one bill. There are 3 or 4 different types of bills that are currently being considered that address this issue here with sports officials. And what we're trying to do is 1427 is the one that we introduced. But to have a bipartisan type of solution
Yeah.
to this problem. And let me just say this. It is bipartisan. There's no Republican, there's no Democrat. It's all for the idea of this behavior has to stop.
I think it's funny because when you're stepped away from the issue, if you're not at that field and you ask somebody, hey, do you think it's okay for you to verbally or physically assault an umpire? They're going to be like, no, that's not okay. But when they're at that game and those blinders are on and they see red, they're the guy that stands up and goes, oh, what was that?
That's because half the time it was their little kid who struck out on a call
Exactly.
or was out at second base stealing.
We're hoping that bill, though, because when you're stepping away and you look at that logically, you're like, it's the right thing to do, right? We should be protecting people. People shouldn't be in that issue.
Honestly, Mark, I look at this bill and I look and go, and even to my fellow brother umpires, it's a start. It's a
is.
start in the right direction. It may not get passed exactly like this. It may be amended 6 other times
I can
before it gets
guarantee you
done.
that's going to happen.
Right.
It is.
So it's a start that has to take place. You just start with the most strict violations, strict offenses. Boom, get them right away.
Can I just say
and let
one
them
other-
get amended?
Yeah.
Can I just say one other thing too? Mark and I are just two guys,
Yeah.
right? We're just two guys that started on a cause. And Mark, to his credit, started it, and I kind of hopped on it because I felt it was important. But there are thousands and thousands of officials out there, and may not be in Massachusetts. You tell me it's across the country and across the world,
Yeah.
right? That we all got to band together and say this is not right. And I don't care what country you're from or what state you're from. This is not acceptable behavior. 22 states in the country have a bill similar to this on the books right now.
Correct.
So there's no reason why we can't get it done.
I start this by saying that when I got excited for this bill, the thing that excited me the most didn't even come a story from an umpire. It actually came from a soccer official. I have a friend of mine who had some issues growing up and made him dabbled into some illegal drugs when he was younger. And a way for him to come out of rehab and to get a job was as a sports official doing soccer games. He did 3 games in a day, 16U, 14U, and a 9U game. At the end of the 9U game, during it, he made a call. Whether it be, I don't know if it was a slide tackle, and they just started berating him. Just went after this poor kid. Just out of rehab, so he gets home. So now he's thinking he's worthless. He was told that he was awful. He slips back into the drugs, and now he's back into rehab. Did that guy think about that when he decided to call that kid useless? And that, to me, that's the thing that aggravated me the most. It wasn't an umpire. It was a soccer official. So I know it's not just baseball. As I say he as a baseball guy, but I know it's not just me.
And this represents not just baseball. This is everything, and it
If
should be.
you are actively working as a sports official, doing something that you're being paid to do, whether not even being paid, if you're volunteering your time as a sports official working, we want to protect you. We want to say, you know what, we got your back. And I think that's a good thing for us to do as a society.
Yeah, I have to say one thing. This bill will definitely protect and stop fans or anybody from doing something in the first place. But obviously, we don't want people going to jail for what they did.
no.
But in the end, that's their fault.
Yeah.
If they do go to jail, that's their fault in the end. 'cause
Do you think
that's what they
sitting down
did.
as a fan and looking down and the first thing I see is on my back stop saying, look, the sports officials working here are protected under the law. If you harass that sports official, you can be held liable for your actions.
Yeah.
And the
Whoa.
penalties in that bill are basically guidelines for judges across the state to say if a guy is a perpetual offender, then obviously you're going to go to the max of the penalties. But obviously the occasional parent that spouts off, we don't want to see them go to jail. But you know what? But they have to understand that there are ramifications for actions.
And high schools have done their part. Like if you eject a coach now, that coach has to go to anger management, But if a fan has to get removed, nothing happens to the fan. Oh, don't worry about it. Come back tomorrow. So what do you think they're going to do when they come back tomorrow? Do you think it's going to be, I learned my lesson by being told I can't do it,
Sometimes if you get
Slap
hit
on the
in
wrist.
Sometimes if you get hit in the wallet, sometimes
That's a little, that can be impactful all of a
can be-
sudden.
Yeah.
Again, now you got to go to yoga class tomorrow morning and explain why you got to write a check to the state.
But explain that to your spouse or your better half and
Oh,
say,
yeah.
I lost a case. I got fined $1,000. Why? Because I acted like an asshole
Hey,
at
honey,
a
what are you
youth game.
doing? Can you come bail
At a
me
youth
out?
game
That-
or a high school game.
I
It
know.
doesn't matter.
I know
That's
in my
not
house
gonna
that
go
wouldn't go over.
No.
Nobody's house it would. But the bill is there. I mean, let's face it. This is just not automatic. Everybody gets thrown in jail. They're going to have the right to due process anyways, but it's a guideline to where they're going to go. These people need to know this. I would also love to be able to see mandatory that signs have to be placed at every baseball field throughout the state. Something that gives warnings
Yes.
about do not act like an
And we
asshole.
have that now. Like when you go to an MIAA event at the beginning of the game, if people are listening,
You have the
they
announcement.
You have the announcement
Yes.
saying that the sports officials and the players are due ultra respect, pretty
Yep.
much. And then, but how many people actually listen to that? Because as soon as that goes off, oh my God, worst call I've ever seen. And there you go, we're down that rabbit hole.
Right. And I think a lot of that has to do with even administrators or police. They kind of sometimes they'll turn that blind eye and just kind of, okay, we don't want an issue, but instead of going, hey, you, enough, or you're going. Next time you open up your mouth, you're going. It's almost embarrassing for that person to be recognized in front of 100 people that I'm the jackass yelling, and then you think, God, it's gotten to the point where the administrator's going to throw me out of this game.
Yeah.
But they should be doing that.
There's hundreds of thousands of videos
ridiculous.
out there. You can look all day on YouTube, as you guys know, and find some video of some parent being an idiot. You know what I mean? And that's all I can say. And sometimes it's the umpires too. Like I'm not sitting here saying that. Listen, all the parents suck. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, there's some umpires out there that'd be more than willing to engage and make themselves look like idiots. So, I just think that it's a kind of behavior that needs to stop, and it needs to stop now.
Right. And I think having this there, like we have a lot of conversations with new umpires when we talk about how to engage fans and everything. And I always held the belief that when the umpire says, well, I don't hear the fans. I don't think that's true. I think you hear the fans, but don't know what to do about it. And I think having protection like this for that umpire, having that trump card pretty much saying, listen, I don't feel safe right now. Now there's got to be a step. So now a phone call can be made, and now we have some litigation to protect that umpire.
I would probably have it tattooed to the umpire's back so the people behind the backstop can read it.
Maybe we can put it on the balloons when we're working, flip it out.
Yeah.
I would also suggest for any umpires just starting, and I hope you still do this, you assign it with more of a veteran guy who knows how to deal with it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But have those young guys watch your partner. Watch what he does.
Right.
Watch the way he handles
How I
things.
learned. Yeah.
And take all that in. And then don't ever be afraid to get a little post-game critique.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's perfect.
No.
And even a guy who's been a 30-year umpire, he's not perfect either.
I used to love working.
listen to 'em.
I used to love working with new guys because I figured they knew the rules better than I did because they just come out of class. So I would always defer to them. What do you got?
Which is great because they always look at you and say, no matter what, you've always got one more game on them. So they're looking for that,
Yeah.
that ability to kind of relate to each other.
I've been doing this for 34 years. I'm still looking for the perfect game. I get to have it. Maybe next one. Who knows?
There's never something there's never been a day that goes by that I haven't learned something new when it comes to baseball. Things that I didn't know or never claimed to know at all. Honestly, it's like I said, and going back to what I said originally, and I don't want to repeat myself, but many relationships, many friendships have been forged through this craft that we do, and it's kind of fun. You know what I mean?
So, and I remember I learned how to argue or how to at least listen and diffuse a situation. Two guys we already talked about. You mentioned Nick Zabelli and Curly Clement. Curly Clements was just the best at being able to diffuse a situation because he was known as a candy man.
Yes.
Always had candy in his pocket. Somebody wants to come out and scream, Curly, what's that? Hold on 1 second. Reach in. What's your choice of candy?
Yeah.
And he would have that coach take a piece of candy. And by the time he's done, okay, what do you got? He's like,
Nah.
shit, I got nothing. I'll leave.
Yeah.
But he always did that with the candy. But, and even Nick was always like, listen, what do you think's going to happen if you jar back, get in their face, you incite more?
Yes.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
incite way more than is necessary. So the whole videotapes of, Ken Kaiser and the rest of those guys back in the 70s used to get like nose to nose.
Earl Weaver. Anything with
all
Earl
these
Weaver.
guys. That was all show, great, but you know what? That doesn't work now.
No.
It does not work.
That was 97, the strike. Remember in 97, all those MLB guys left.
I can remember ejecting a coach, and of course, like at the college level, it's like an immediate phone call to the commissioner or the assigner. At that time was Nick. So it was, I had a legitimate right to throw the coach out.
Yeah.
But the reason I threw the coach out is because I had one more word to say. And Nick turned around and said, Dom, why is it always that you have to have the last word? And I go, yeah, you're right. Why? I could have saved the coach not having to throw him out and not having to deal with a whole bunch of paperwork. You know what I mean? So I learned from that sort of. I mean, I didn't take it to rest with me, but I tried to think about that and try not to get the last word all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of last words, we're coming up on almost the last word. This has gone by pretty quick. Joey, what do you got?
So obviously with technology nowadays, it's running rampant, going very fast. What do you have to say about the AI officiating? People are wanting to do it by like next year in the MLB. How they have that square box and officiating due to that.
Hey, we do it in tennis. I have no issues with it, but I think it's going to be hard to tell Canton Little League that they have to put up AI officiating in their.
Yeah.
I don't
You know
think that's
what?
going to fly.
That's not going to fly. But what I will say is I love the game. Paul knows how much I love this game. I'm a traditionalist when it comes to like AI technology. Listen, I sign on to all of the stuff that we need to sign on to in terms of training umpires and things like that, but I don't sign on to making his job more difficult. And you know, part of the game of umpiring is making the human errors, or in our own rights, we've speeded up the game in certain ways because of how we call a game. So those things would be taken away. And, you know, you think we're having problems now with game times. If we have to call the strike zone the way it's wanted to be called, we could be here 4 or 5 hours.
I wonder if anyone has ever asked Greg Maddox how he feels about strike
Maddox
zones
was-
on the
yeah.
line.
Yeah,
I wonder what his opinion would be on that.
He had a career on living on the line, you know what I mean? So, yeah, honestly.
Well, I think we're getting to the end here.
Oh, wow. Well, you know,
So-
I did bring something with me today.
Not just your baseball wisdom and knowledge.
No. I don't know who to. So who is like the starter of this?
Well, let's give it to Joey. Joey is
Joey
the
is-
mastermind
I don't
behind our
want to take
podcast.
the credit, but I
But
will.
you will.
All right, so this is my gift to you guys for having us on. I hope
is
you
crazy.
I hope you display
That
it
is so
someplace
good.
Nice.
Yeah, I will. I'll put a closer picture up so you get to see
That
it
is
in
so
depth.
good.
But
But these are all one of a kind types of things, Paul. I don't mass produce these. These are like, hey, can you make me this? You know, I did your cornhole
Yep.
bullets. I can try to do anything, but
Folks, you're gonna see this on the podcast. For those who are just not listening on the radio, you're gonna see this on the video. We're gonna post the DMD wood designs for some of the best, most unique, custom made woodwork, and anything from signs to cutting boards
Let
to
me just say- let me
cornhole boards.
let me just say this. I am a one-man band here. You have a lot of subscribers, and I
Yeah.
appreciate all the support. These are one-of-a-kind types of things. I just do them as they come. So if
Even the one behind you, Joey.
yeah,
yeah.
this one.
And then there's the block right there. I mean, it's just beautiful. Bruins logo, Patriots.
I think when he's done too, is like Grandma's cookies, a little bit of TLC on each one.
yeah, we sprinkle a little
Secret ingredient.
we sprinkle a little fairy dust on it somewhere.
Really, really nicely done.
Well, that's for you, and there's a little note on the back, handwritten from me. We won't divulge that because that's from the heart. People think that I don't have a heart, but I do.
Well, thank you. Thank you
that
very
on.
much.
We put that on the background.
Appreciate
of our
everything.
podcast.
Appreciate coming in here and joining us.
Thanks for having us.
I thank you for having us, and
Yeah.
this has been great because I thought I was going to be nervous, but it's like sitting in someone's basement.
We try to make it comfortable. It is just it is just like sitting in someone's basement, and we want to make it comfortable for people. We have that way of making it comfortable.
It's amazing how
Yeah,
you do it.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
It is something.
Yeah.
Mark, thanks for coming in and joining
thanks
us
for having me.
and really
Great.
talking about this bill. Again, this bill will probably be revised and amended 6, 7, 8, maybe a dozen times over. But it's the start. And folks who are watching, if you're not a game official, please, you got to back off. You got to think about what you're doing. Think about even your kid watching you act like a moron up in the stands.
Right. One
That
last
is
thing.
something that really just drives me up a wall.
One last thing. I've been told that we need 80 co-sponsors onto this bill.
80.
80, because that will show overwhelming support for this. So I ask, if you live in the state of Massachusetts and you believe in this as much as I do,
Right.
just reach out to your state senator, state rep, and just ask them to co-sponsor this bill because it's really important.
We'll be out of committee soon, I hope.
Yeah, hopefully,
See what happens.
Hopefully, and it's just two guys that can make a change. I just hope that after people watch this, that we can sign on to it and get this thing rolling.
That'll be great.
Last word, DiMare, right there. Just to let you know.
You'd make Nick proud. You got to get the last word, and that's good. But you know what? I get the last word on this one.
we do have over 160,000 followers on TikTok, so I'll make that a clip and then I'll produce that and show that out to everybody. So yeah, if you live in Mass, please
do.
Folks, this is important. We know you contact your state representative for many other things. Please do so on this one and force them to get in there, at least have that discussion, start amending the bill, whichever is deemed right, the way to get this so it's passed. I wish you all the very best. Good luck in your seasons. And thank you for coming in.
All right.
With that, guys, we're out. In the words of RG, ciao for now.